How do closing cost credits work? Well, when a buyer and a seller agree to a contract to buy and sell property to each other, they sometimes agree to give what's called a closing cost credit. This can either be a fixed dollar amount, let's say $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, or a percentage of the sale price, 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever it may be. The concept or the idea behind a closing cost credit is the buyer generally has to have a certain amount of money for a down payment, a certain amount of money for closing costs for their lender and for the title company, and then they have to factor in things like moving costs and getting set up in the new home. So if they had planned to have, let's say, $5,000 saved for the down payment, now they have to factor in all these additional items that they hadn't counted on. If buyers were required to have these funds up front every time they purchased the property, there would be a lot less buyers available and it would slow the market down. So the concept is that the seller is allowed to help the buyer with their closing costs because the seller is receiving the money from the sale of the home, so they have a little bit more flexibility and money available to pay for closing costs. It's not required, it's something that's negotiated, but by doing it, sellers are generally increasing the number of potential buyers because there are more people available to buy the home. So the way that it works is once it's agreed upon, whether it's a percentage or a fixed dollar amount, on the day of closing, we reconcile the account, meaning that we start with, at the very top, how much the buyer owes and how much the seller is owed from the buyer. We deduct everybody's closing costs, and then the buyer on that statement receives a credit. Let's say that it's $1,000. The buyer receives a credit on that statement. It's just reflected as a credit from the seller. And on the seller side, it's deducted. The $1,000 is removed, saying we're removing $1,000 for the closing cost credit. And then at the very bottom, it tells you how much the buyer has to pay in total and how much the seller is receiving back in total. It's not actual money that's given to the seller from the buyers as far as cash or check that's written from them. It's just reconciled inside of the closing and resolved on the day of closing on the closing statement. So we hope you found the information in this video useful. Remember that it is general advice, not specific to you or your situation. If you have specific questions, you should hire an attorney or at least consult with one. Because you do pay for the attorney that represents you on the purchase or sale of your house, you are allowed to choose whichever attorney you want. Tell your agent or broker that you want the attorneys of Robson and Lopez LLC representing you in your transaction, and give us a call today to get the process started.